Barry was awesome. Barry hadn't worked in a long time, and we just kind of talked about things backstage and went out there and worked, and it was fantastic. I mean, I was out there with Barry Windham. Barry hadn't got hurt. Barry would have been NWA champ forever. He was that freaking good. People say that Randy Orton reminds people of Barry Windham. Man, that's a huge compliment. I think it's true. But man, that's how good Barry Windham is. And he was that good then. He had worked it a long time, went out there and we just had a match, and Barry was Barry Windham. It was fantastic.
I do want to ask, I've talked a lot to David Crockett over at adfreeshows.com. We have a little series called The Book, and we go through his brother's red book, the old booking books of who was working where in what town, how many tickets sold, what was the gate, all that sort of thing. And we've had some pretty in-depth conversations about Barry Windham, because I think most people listening to this or watching this, if they're watching on YouTube at somethingtowrestle.com, they know that Barry Windham was one of the best wrestlers in the world in like 85, 86, 87, 88. And the NWA never pulled the trigger. And when I talked to Crockett about it, he made it almost seem as if it wasn't an aspiration of Barry's. Like, Barry didn't really want the responsibility of being the NWA touring champion, because let's be honest, it was a miserable existence. You're on the road all the time. You're in a different town every night. So it was not so much about, did he have the talent to do it? It was more about, hey, his quality of life, that just didn't really work for him. That's not something he wanted. And I've talked to Road Dogg about his dad, Bullet Bob, like, hey, why didn't he ever try to spend more time in New York, or, try to expand to a more national platform? But he lived on the beach. He had life like he liked it, and so I get it. When you get comfortable, like Jerry Lawler comes to mind. Jerry Lawler had talent that could have been a much bigger opportunity outside of just Memphis. But when you're making a bunch of money and you're in your bed most nights and you got a lot of control and a lot of say over your career, that's hard to beat. Do you think that was more the case with Barry, or was it something else?
I think it was more something else. I've heard that before about Barry's, perceived lackadaisical attitude. He was just so talented that he could go out there and do anything he wanted. I disagree with that, being, friends with Barry and traveling with Barry for over a year, or right at it, however long it was. We're together all the time. And Barry was a guy who didn't politic. And I think that hurt him more than anything. Barry was not going to lobby for being NWA champion. Barry was not going to put his guys on his side, like a lot of guys would do back then, and make sure that they had guys going to the NWA annual convention that would lobby for them. Barry wouldn't do that. Barry was just a stand-up dude that had let his talent speak for itself. And so I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think people can look at that from 30,000 feet down and say, well, maybe that's a lack of motivation. It wasn't a lack of motivation. Barry just didn't kiss anybody's ass, and Barry didn't lobby for anything. He was talented. He could go out there and work with anybody. And I never talked to him about it, about being NWA champion. I just think he probably always thought it was a natural progression to happen. Of course, then he got hurt. I think they should have pulled the trigger. I think Barry would have been a great NWA champion. Would have been one of the best of all time.
We know eventually he did become the world champ, but it was much later in WCW, but he did have some classic battles with Ric Flair. There's no doubt that he's one of the best to ever do it. And one of the things I hear wrestlers often say about Barry Windham, John, is that he was just a natural as far as positioning. He knew where to be and when to be there, that sort of thing. Can you speak to that and give us any concrete examples of what that even means?
Yeah, he used to get in the ring. I've never seen anybody do it the way he put his knee on the apron and then just kind of step right into the ring. It was just, Barry was just smoother than everybody else. And I'd see him, they weren't using him that much. And he wasn't going to lobby for or kiss anybody's ass to get used. He was just going to show up and do his job. We were in Kansas City one time and we were wrestling, I think it was Furnace on LaFawn. I'm not sure. We wrestled Test and Albert there too, but I think it was Furnace on LaFawn that we wrestled there. Must have wrestled there a couple times. I think. I'm not sure. You can check it all on the internet. But I think we was in Kansas City, and the place went crazy for Barry because they remember him from the NWA days. Man, that Barry Windham, he turned back the clock 10 years that night. It was just amazing. I'm sitting there on the apron going, my God, man, I'm seeing one of the greatest of all time at his freaking peak. I mean, Barry could still go. Barry could do anything he wanted. Barry it was so easy to Barry. he would explain it to you, and he would explain things to me, but he just kind of assumed everybody else kind of had a knowledge like he had, and he would go out there and he could do anything in that ring. There was nothing. I mean, with Barry Windham, there was nothing called in the back. He didn't need it. He just went out there and felt the crowd and could do what he wanted, and he could do anything. He was a guy's, like a lot of those old guys, and I put Barry in the old category. I guess we are old. We're all old now. He could just absolutely do anything.
We all love Barry Windham. We spent a little bit of time talking about the NWA era. I do want to talk about the 2 stints in the WWF. I mean, we know that he's going to be there in this era, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I really loved as a kid, one of the first times I remember seeing him was as the Widowmaker. What did you think of that presentation?
I thought it was good, and I don't know if Vince, really had an idea of what to do with him. Vince didn't have a great grasp of wrestling outside of WWE. People would tell him stuff and he would hear names, but Vince was a workaholic. He was busy working on his business all the time, so he didn't see a lot of stuff outside of it. I know, obviously, he knew Barry's dad, and he and Jack Lanza were dear friends. And so I don't know, where Vince's mindset came from with Barry. I thought it was great, and I thought Barry could get anything over, and I don't know why Barry didn't end up staying quite a bit longer with the Widowmaker. I thought the Stalker was horrible. I thought it was terrible. Barry hated it too.
Oh yeah. Okay. So I do want to talk about that. As a reminder, Barry had at least 3 stints. We know there was the WrestleMania 1 stint where he's there with, I guess that was his brother-in-law, Mike Rotunda at the time. And they're going to be the US Express Tag Team Champions. And then, eventually we know that he's going to come back as the Widowmaker, which is my personal favorite. But when he comes back as the Stalker, and Bruce has told us the story before, I guess this was born out of there being an interview, or not an interview, but a conversation really between Vince and Barry. And when Vince understood what an avid hunter Barry was, he thought, well, that's part of his personality. Let's make that a thing. And this is the era where, hey, we're going to make Bob Holly a race car driver, and we're going to make Duke Drosay a garbage man. So it's the occupational gimmick. And now we've got a hunter, I guess. I don't know. What, if any, conversation did you have with Barry about how he gets saddled with this Stalker gimmick?
Yeah, and we also had Henry Godwin as a pig farmer. Henry was, he told Vince, the story that he told Vince, what do you do? And he literally told him, I'm a pig farmer. And so that's how Henry Godwin became a pig farmer. Vince was wanting realistic things, to be part of people's character. And Barry's hunting background, which Barry did, Kern, did he shoot Kern, or Kern shot him with the 9mm? I mean, I
don't know this story. I need to hear this story.
Yeah, so they're out shooting. They're out shooting on the road. I believe it's Kern shot Barry. One of the ones they're shooting at they pull off like they're shooting at a roadside. They all had guns, back in the day, and they just would shoot stuff going down the road because the cops didn't do nothing. And so they pull over and they're shooting at a sign, and the way the sign had been bent, the bullet hits and comes right back and goes in Barry's leg. Barry rolls down the hill, and Kern's like, "Get up, you big baby!" He goes, "You shot me, you bastard!" He goes, "It's just a leg wound." Yeah. So Kern shot Barry with a 9mm gun.
What a fascinating human being Barry Windham is. We know he had the initial run. He's going to taste that tag team gold. He's there during the rock and wrestling era, the launch of WrestleMania. He comes back for a cup of coffee in 1989, and I think that's around the time that his father got in a little bit of legal trouble, and maybe he went home to take care of things for a bit. But Vince is open to bringing him back in 96. Lots of people have had multiple stints with the company, but sometimes it feels like, I don't know, you're once and you're out of here. Why did Vince and Barry always get back together? It feels like Vince must have had a lot of respect for Barry to bring him back twice.
I think Vince had a ton of respect for Barry and for Barry's work, both. Vince, you could tell, really liked Barry, and I don't know what it was that he liked. Maybe before he got to know him better, Barry was just a cool dude, is just a cool dude. I mean, he's just a guy you want to hang out with and have beers with. Barry's just a cool guy. He knows everything. I mean, literally, Barry knows how to fix cars. If something wrong, if something goes wrong in your hotel room, Barry can fix it. I mean, Barry's one of those guys. Barry can do anything. He's just a smart, handy guy. He's just a cool dude, and people just love Barry. Plus, he can drink. Good Lord, man. he has the freaking level of a freaking dinosaur or a freaking elephant. I've never hardly seen anybody drink like Barry and not be drunk. It's just amazing. He's just a cool dude. And I think that's what Vince probably liked about Barry. You know, Vince liked just stand-up guys. Barry Windham was a stand-up dude. You know, he was not going to stooge anybody. He was not going to rat on anybody. Barry was just going to show up to work and do, you know, what he's supposed to do. He's a guy that you don't mess with. He's a guy that has a huge backbone. And I think that appealed to Vince. I know when he came in, Jake Roberts was an agent, and he came around. He was talking to Barry. He was trying to help Barry. And he goes, and what would a stalker do? And Barry, you could tell, was just frustrated with that. He goes, he just kind of blew him off, you know, because he didn't like the gimmick. You could tell Barry did not like the stalker gimmick. It was something that Barry didn't understand. He didn't really like it. I think he came in hoping he would do something and get out of it pretty quick and do something else.
SaveWithConrad.com.
My name is Rajiv. I'm in Sacramento, California. I came to Save with Conrad because I've heard Conrad talk about how he helps people all the time save money and the best route to go for getting some mortgages and finances done. And having heard so many different testimonials in the past, it made the most sense to go this route. We were in the market for a new house and we wanted to know what we could afford. So we spoke with Steve and then Diane to get through the pre-approval process to see what we could afford. And then once we were able to understand that aspect of it, that was when we were able to shop around for a house to get a mortgage through Save with Conrad. Everybody on the team was great. Everybody really explained everything fully to where it was more in like layman's terms to where I could understand it as someone not in the business or having shopped around for houses too many times. So being able to understand every step of the process and talking with everyone on the team about that was really, really helpful. And it made me feel really confident that I was going the right route. I would definitely recommend Save with Conrad to others. I know that sometimes people look at it and they go, oh, they're based in Alabama. What could they help me with? But I'm out here in California and they were able to square everything away and get things done really quickly, as opposed to sometimes even people out here don't move as quickly as the Save with Conrad team. So everything was really well done, really efficient, and I would definitely recommend Save with Conrad to others. My name is Rajiv. I'm in Sacramento, California, and I was able to get into my dream home with SaveWithConrad.com.
NMLS number 2129, equal housing lender. SaveWithConrad.com.